Hello everyone, my name is Brayden, this is Airless Quill 9, and in today's video we're going to take a look at a subclass that released in the Unearthed Arcana 2025 document, Horror Subclasses. And that particular subclass is going to be the Artificer Reanimator. So this is an entirely new subclass to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's going to be basically just an entirely new subclass for the Artificer that is currently being remade for the 2024 rules. Supposed to come out in a new book this year called Eberron Forge of the Artificer. And this is just going to be an additional subclass that's going to appear in some WotC publication at some point in time, I assume, as long as it goes through development without any major issues. So we're going to take a look at this subclass and talk about all of its specific features and see whether or not this is something that we are interested in maybe playing at some point in time. So let's get to it. So the Artificer Reanimator, their subtag says reassemble corpses to raise the dead. So their subtext is that reanimators defy the laws of nature in pursuit of gruesome experiments. These grim artificers stitch together servants from disparate corpses using foul magic to strengthen the living and transform the art of necromancy into a terrifying scene. So some pretty interesting macabre stuff. But let's go ahead and take a look at the Reanimator spells that we would get at 3rd level. So it says whenever you reach an Artificer level specified in the Reanimator spells table, you thereafter always have the listed spells prepared. For the Reanimator spells, the options that we have available here at 3rd level, we would get the spells False Life, Spare the Dying, and Witch Bolt. Witch Bolt in particular is a very, very nice spell, especially since the remaster for the 2024 rules. Witch Bolt is doing a lot of really nice work in terms of damage and consistent damage as well. So I really like the Witch Bolt spell, and it's very nice to see on the spell list. So that's a big thumbs up for me. But at 5th level, we get Blindness, Deafness, and Enhance Ability. Both of those are nice utility spells. 9th level, we would get Animate Dead and Lightning Bolt. Animate Dead is very thematic for what the subclass seems to be, and Lightning Bolt is a pretty decent damaging spell up there with Fireball, so that's a nice option there. At level 13, we would get Blight and Death Ward. Death Ward in particular feels very nice for this particular subclass, and Blight is a nice necrotic damage dealing spell, so that's a nice spell to see. And then finally at 17th level, we would get Anti-Life Shell and Raise Dead. Anti-Life Shell is a very nice spell, and then Raise Dead is pretty good, particularly in helping raise NPCs or possibly PCs from death, so that's a nice spell to see on this list. So overall, pretty nice spell list, and really I don't see any like really bad spells on here. False Life has also seen some improvements as well, so that's not very bad either. But the real interesting thing here is the Spare the Dying cantrip that is added in here, and there's a reason for that, because another level 3 feature that we get here is going to be called Jolt to Life. So this says that whenever we cast Spare the Dying, we can modify the spell so that it sends a jolt of electricity through the target, reviving it. So the target regains 1 hit point, and then each creature in a 10-foot emanation originating from the target makes a dexterity saving throw against our spell save DC, and it takes lightning damage equal to 1d4 plus half of our Artificer level, which is rounded up, and that's pretty nice there. Of course, that damage is on a failed save, and then the target takes half as much damage if they succeed on the save. So that's also pretty nice there. And then it does say here that we can modify the spell this way a number of times equal to our intelligence modifier, and we regain all expended uses when we finish a long rest. So this is a nice utility thing. You are not going to be casting Spare the Dying very often unless someone drops to 0 hit points. That's the only reason you would ever cast Spare the Dying. But Spare the Dying has seen some nice changes in the 2024 revision. Now the range increases every time there is a cantrip upgrade level, so that's pretty nice there. So this will become a lot. This should be useful at all levels of play. And the damage for this feature scales relatively nicely. I mean, 1d4 plus half your Artificer level isn't a ton of damage, but it is some damage, and it's not a meager amount of damage. So I feel like it's always going to come into play. The only real question here is whether or not they need to have a number of uses attached to it, since it's something that you're not going to be using that often to begin with. But as it is, this is a pretty interesting utility type feature, and when you need to cast Spare the Dying, I mean, may as well do it to have the target regain a hit point and then damage any creatures around it. So the only way I see this feature not wanting to use this particular feature is if you have multiple player characters or friendly NPCs within range of a downed target. That's the only thing I see that you might not want to use this particular feature. But as it is, I think there's some pretty interesting play options regarding this particular feature, and I like the flavor of it. This is pretty neat. So next up, we do have a third level 3 feature that we need to talk about. This one is Reanimated Companion, which makes a lot of sense. This one says that we use Tinker's Tools or another type of Artisan's Tools with which you have proficiency, and you can take a magic action to create a reanimated companion through the power of necromancy and science. The companion manifests in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of you. You determine the companion's appearance. Your choices don't affect the companion's game statistics. The companion is friendly to you and your allies and obeys you. It lasts until you finish a long rest or until you take a magic action to dismiss it early, at which point it harmlessly collapses into a pile of viscera. It immediately drops to 0 hit points and dies, triggering its death burst trait if you die. Once you create a companion, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest or expend a spell slot to create one. You can have only one companion at a time and can't create one while your companion is present. There is also the section that says the companion in combat, in which it states, in combat, the companion acts during your turn. It can move and take its reaction on its own, but the only action it takes is the dodge action, unless you take a bonus action to command it to take an action. If you have the incapacitated condition, the companion acts on its own and isn't limited to the dodge action. So, as we can see here, this is the Reanimated Companion stat block. There's a small undead, neutral, armor class, it's 10 plus your intelligence modifier. Hit points is 4 plus 4 times your Artificer level, and it has a number of hit dice, d6s equal to your Artificer level. Speed is 30 feet, strength 14, dex 10, constitution 16, intelligence 4, wisdom 10, charisma 6, resistances to necrotic and poison, immunities to lightning, charmed, exhaustion, poisoned, senses, blind sight 60 feet, passive perception 10, languages, understands languages you know. And then, of course, challenge rating is none, and its proficiency bonus is equal to our proficiency bonus. And then we get into traits and actions. So the traits that it has are Death Burst, which activates when the companion dies. Each creature in a 10-foot emanation originating from the companion has to make a dexterity saving throw, the DC which is equal to our spell save DC, and on a failure they take 2d6 necrotic damage. That's kind of nice. Lightning Absorption, though, whenever the companion is subjected to lightning damage, it regains a number of hit points equal to the lightning damage dealt. That's a pretty great trait, and you got some pretty interesting shenanigans that you could do to make the reanimated companion regain hit points. And then finally, actions. We have Dreadful Swipe. This is a melee attack roll, the bonus of which is equal to our spell attack modifier, and it has a reach of 5 feet. And then on a hit, the attack deals 1d4 plus 2 plus their intelligence modifier in necrotic damage, and the target can't take opportunity attacks until the start of its next turn. So I like a lot of what is going on in this stat block. My only concerns with this particular stat block is that it is a lot weaker than the Ranger companions that we see in the Beastmaster Ranger, for example. So I really like what they have here. I specifically like the traits, and especially Lightning Absorption. That's really potent. And I feel like the Dreadful Swipe action isn't too bad. I mean, it's low on the damage side, but the benefit of the target of the attack not being able to make opportunity attacks until the start of its next turn, that is pretty good. So really my only concern here is the lower armor class and lower hit points compared to the other beast companions that we see that are currently official in Dungeons and Dragons. And I feel like maybe you could give the Reanimated companion a small buff to those. I know particularly for hit points, the bestial companion has 5 plus 5 times your ranger level, so maybe make it similar to that, but this isn't horrible. And then armor class, I believe the beast companion also is 13 plus your wisdom modifier, so that's a lot lower than the beast companion here for the reanimated companion. So I would like to see a small buff there, even if it was like 12 plus their intelligence modifier. That would be nice. But overall, kind of like what I'm seeing here. Even with the Dreadful Swipe, the damage is low. I feel like you could potentially maybe increase it to a D6, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. And we're going to see here that you can actually do some really neat things with the Reanimated companion. So I want to go to the level 5 feature so we can talk about this real quick. So at level 5, we get strange modifications. This says that whenever you create a reanimated companion, it gains one of the following options of your choice. Choose when you create the companion. So we have 2 options here. The first is called Arcane Conduit. Arcane Conduit says you can cast spells as though you were in the companion space, but you must use your own senses. Once per turn, when you cast an Artificer spell from the Evocation or Necromancy schools and deal damage while your companion is within 120 feet of you, you can add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of that spell. That isn't too bad. I don't think it's amazing, but the next one is really neat. So Ferocity. When you command your companion to take the Dreadful Swipe action, the companion can use it twice. That's really nice. So this 1d4 plus 2 plus their intelligence modifier necrotic damage suddenly becomes 2d4 plus 4 plus twice their intelligence modifier, assuming you hit with both of these attacks. So that's pretty cool there. So honestly may not need a damage boost as long as you're doing the ferocity option, but I don't think you're technically. I don't really see a reason to use Arcane Conduit over Ferocity necessarily, unless you're just planning on casting a lot of spells during a combat. And even then, all you really get is a small damage bonus and the ability to cast spells through the companion space. So it's not crazy, and it's only for evocation and necromancy spells. So I feel like Arcane Conduit could probably use a bonus to make it a little bit more desirable of a option. But I really don't know what I would personally do to buff that. But I do think Ferocity is pretty good, specifically for the Reanimated Companion that we see here. I feel like that's going to be a really nice boon for it. Alright, so at level 9 we get a feature called Improved Reanimation. This says, you experiment and alter your companion further. Whenever you create a reanimated companion, it gains one of the following options of your choice. Choose when you create the companion. So we have 3 options here. The first is called Bloated. The companion becomes a large or medium, your choice. Whenever it hits a large or smaller creature with its dreadful swipe action, that creature can also be pushed up to 10 feet away from the companion. Additionally, you can add your intelligence modifier to the damage dealt by the companion's death burst. Okay, so these aren't bad options. The ability to become large or medium is really... I don't know if there's a real mechanical benefit to this other than being able to, with the large option, affect more spaces around the companion, but the ability to push creatures is pretty nice, particularly if you chose the ferocity option at level 5, because then you can make 2 of those attacks and be able to potentially push 2 different creatures 10 feet away. And then, I mean, adding your intelligence modifier to the damage of your death burst, that's a small benefit, and it's really only going to come into play if the reanimated companion dies. So that's probably not going to come up a whole lot unless your reanimated companion is just taking a massive amount of damage. So next here is Gaunt, and Gaunt increases the companion's speed to 45 feet and gives it a climb speed equal to its speed. Already, those are amazing buffs. Then it can climb difficult surfaces, including among ceilings, without needing to make an ability check. So basically spider climb, which is great. And in addition, whenever a creature of your choice starts its turn within a 10-foot emanation originating from your companion, the creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC or have the frightened condition until the start of its next turn. That's really good. So Gaunt is a lot of stuff here. So that's some really good options here. Honestly, if I'm thinking about it, I think what should happen here with, I feel like Gaunt is currently a lot better than Bloated. I think Bloated should give the companion some temporary hit points as well. I think that's the option that I would go with here, and I will make that suggestion when the survey comes out. But lastly, in the options here, we have one called Moist, which is a lovely word that a lot of people hate. The companion gains a swim speed equal to its speed. In addition, whenever the companion is hit by an attack roll from a creature within 10 feet of it, the attacker takes acid damage equal to your intelligence modifier. So honestly, that's not bad. The swim speed is situational, but the damage is not horrible because it's equal to your intelligence modifier, and that's something that you're going to be increasing as an artificer. And it's whenever a creature within 10 feet of the companion hits it with an attack roll, doesn't matter if it's melee or ranged. So some pretty decent options there for that damage to happen on a turn. So honestly, I don't think that is bad. I don't think it is as good as Gaunt though. And maybe there could be a additional benefit here. Maybe you could add in advantage on ability checks to end the grappled condition, possibly, is what I'm thinking here. So I may make a note of that and put that in the survey as well. But overall, this feature isn't bad. I think Gaunt is the best option of these three right now. So I think a small buff to bloated and moist is needed. And I'll make a note of that in the survey when that comes out. Lastly, at level 15, we get a feature called Promethean Reanimation. This says that you have mastered the science of revivification, granting you the following benefits. Facilitated Revival. When you cast Revivify or Raise Dead, the cost of any material components needed for that spell is halved. That's a nice benefit. I don't know how often that's going to come into play, but reducing the cost of those components is a nice benefit, and it may make you the de facto reviver should that come into play. So with that feature, honestly, it's not bad, and I mean it's a nice benefit. Let's see. Next, we have Improved Companion. The damage of your reanimated companion's death burst increases to 46. So that's a nice increase there. And it also says that necrotic damage dealt by your companion ignores resistance. That's a pretty good buff, especially at these later levels when you're more likely to be facing foes that have either resistance. A lot of undead will have resistance to necrotic damage. So at later levels, that does give you a benefit against those particular creatures. So that is nice. And then lastly, we have Life Transfer. So you can siphon the animating magic of your companion to bolster yourself. When you take damage, you can take a reaction to cause your animated companion to drop to 0 hit points. The companion immediately dies, triggering its death burst trait, and you regain a number of hit points equal to your artificer level. If we go back real quick, death burst is when the creature dies, and we can bring the companion back as long as we spend a magic action and potentially a spell slot, since we've already created one. So not too bad here. I feel like maybe you could tack on a die to the number of hit points regained. I mean, granted, it is 15 hit points, so that's not terrible. But this is an okay benefit. I feel like maybe there's not too much happening in the 15th level feature. Maybe they could add some additional benefit here. Like maybe if they just added like a D6 or something to the number of hit points regained for the Artificer, that would be okay. But I don't really know. This feels like there's a lot happening with this feature, but I don't know if it's necessarily amazing for what the end or the capstone feature for this Artificer needs to be. I feel like it may be missing a little bit of something, but it's not horrible as is. But yeah, overall, I don't think there's anything wrong with this feature. Just feels like a lot of tiny things, and I don't know if they all equal something incredibly amazing. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on with this Artificer. There's a lot of interesting features here. I think overall, you got some pretty decent features together, but I feel like the companion may be a little lacking. It's hard to say without having seen what the official Battlesmith companion is going to be, because you would probably want it a little bit comparable to that companion, ideally. And I really think those companions need to be comparable to the Beast companion as well. But we won't know until the Eberron book comes out later this year. But overall, the Reanimator seems pretty interesting. I really like the flavor of the subclass a lot, so overall, I don't really have any complaints here. I feel like it's doing exactly what it set out to do, and it really is hitting all the flavor points for this particular subclass. This is a nice addition to the Artificer, and considering that we're going to be getting 5 subclasses for the Artificer in the Eberron book when that comes out, having a nice additional 6 subclass option is going to be pretty neat. So I hope they really keep this in and just tweak a few things to make it as good as it possibly can be. But yeah, that's going to be it for this particular video. So thank you all for watching. If you liked this particular subclass, let me know in the comments. Let me know what changes you would like to see for this subclass, since it is an Unearthed Arcana subclass. And if you do have comments, fill out the survey so that Wizards of the Coast can know what changes you feel like need to be made to the subclass in order to make it the best that it possibly can be. But yeah, I like what the bones of this subclass are, and I feel like with a couple changes, this could be a really interesting subclass. But yeah, that's going to be it for this particular video. So thank you all for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next video. See ya later.